Welcome back to the Grenadier podcast, Real Estate Uncovered. Today I speak with Sue Clydesdale, mortgage broker for Mortgage Express. You obviously love this business. Tell me what you love the most about it. Today, an absolute exclusive. Welcome back to the Grenadier podcast, Real Estate Uncovered. So Sue, introduce yourself to us.
My name's Sue Clydesdale. I'm with Mortgage Express. I've been a broker for probably over 20 years now. I've just reached my milestone of settling $1 billion.
Congratulations.
In settled loans. And previous to that, I was with the ANZ Bank, so I have quite a long history of lending.
Amazing. Congratulations on that milestone. So I know you work closely with first home buyers and are super passionate about helping them get into the marketplace. Tell us what's happening and what you think people need to know.
Okay, so there have been a lot of changes introduced. You've probably all heard about the triple CFA. It's been the buzzword for a long time. It's actually been quite crippling trying to get a mortgage in the last year. But that's all going to change. National government have said they will come out and make changes to that. What we don't know yet and when we don't know. I'm hoping like mad I don't have to add up everything everybody's spending for the last 3 months anymore. I hope that's the first change they make. But that's all changing. The Bright Line, of course, has gone from 10% to 10 years, to 2 years. So that's a big change. Investors will be back in the market because the LVR restrictions for investors have now gone to 70%. So the banks are allowed to lend 70% rather than 65%. But as we all know, if you've got a lot of equity in your property, you can borrow 100% for the investment property. But the best one I think they've brought out, and especially for first home buyers, it's been very difficult to get a pre-approval for first home buyers borrowing more than 80% in the last year. But the Reserve Bank has just changed it so that the banks are allowed to lend 20% of all of their funds in that over 80% space. Now, you might think that doesn't sound like much, but that's huge because they've only been allowed to lend 10 or 15%. So we're hoping like mad now we can get back to pre-approvals for first home buyers.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, and I know that grant has gone, but it's quite interesting because I've done one loan in the last 2 years where the people used the grant because it was capped at that $575,000 spend. People wanted to spend more than that to buy a house, so they were quite happy to let the grant go and buy a better house. But on my way here, actually, I was listening and I noticed all the building companies are starting to bring in a grant for people who want to build their first home because that's where in Christchurch it was beneficial because you could build up to $650,000 and of course you could still build a house here for that. So that grant, if the Golden Homes and the like start bringing that in, that's going to be really helpful for first home buyers.
That's a lot of information for people to take on board, and it's great to hear, and it sounds all relatively positive, and will stimulate our market even more, I'm sure. What should a first home buyer do when they decide maybe now's the right time to buy a property?
Okay, so the first thing they should do is go and see a mortgage broker. Honestly, the difference between the banks, what they'll lend is huge. I recently did a loan. Now, I know it's not first home buyers, but I did it for a couple with 2 children, 2 cars. The lowest offer they got was $470,000, but the highest one was $590,000. I mean, that's over $100,000 difference in what you can borrow between banks. Yeah. And if you go to your own bank and they were the $470,000 one, do you think they're going to tell you, if you walk up the road, you're going to get more? No, you need to know where you're at and what you can borrow before you start. First home buyers absolutely have to keep their accounts clean in that, few months before a loan. I meet them all the time and they say, oh, yes, I've been overdrawn 6 times in the last month, but the bank didn't care. They didn't ring me or anything. But now that you're trying to borrow $500,000, they care.
Yeah.
So you have to keep yourself clean, pay that credit card on time. Don't go into unarranged overdraft. Keep all your loans up to date. It honestly makes a massive difference when you're going for a loan, that conduct and your character.
Absolutely. And I know that banks occasionally used to almost stalk people on social media and see what their behaviours are. I don't know if that's a real thing anymore.
That is a real thing, honestly. and it's quite frightening because, people will say, I want to get a loan and this is how much we want to spend on a house. And next minute you see her on social media showing that she's pregnant or something. And believe me, the banks actually do look it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you do have to be very careful.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of a deposit, with these changes, obviously 20% used to be the norm, but in some cases you're getting people pre-approved with less deposit.
So that loan that's underwritten by Kāinga Ora, the first home buyer's loan, that's still there, and you can still use your Kiwi Saver for any loan that you get for a first home buyer. The banks like a 20% deposit. Yes, it's optimal, right? That's the best way to get a loan. But if I'm getting them regularly with a 10% deposit, as I said, it's been difficult if you earn too much to get that first home buyer's loan or haven't been in your employment for 1 full year and can't get it, then it's been extremely difficult to get pre-approvals for people borrowing more than 80%. But the loans are there and all the banks will look at it if you're in a live contract, and we do still have the first home buyer's loan if you fit into it, and I can get you a pre-approved there.
Fantastic.
90% though. I know they say 95%, but it's extremely difficult to get a loan at 95% lending.
Yeah, but 10% deposit, 90% lending is possible.
It is definitely possible.
Yeah, fantastic. In terms of moving away from the first home buyers to people buying and selling, it's always the age-old question, do we buy first then sell? Do we sell first then buy? I know that bridging finance has been very tight. Is that still the case? Or?
Yes, it is still the case. That triple CFA regulation made a huge difference to that as well. So where the banks used to look at you and think, oh yes, you're a really good customer and you've never done anything wrong, and they'd just give you bridging finance, those days are gone.
Yeah.
If you don't fit into bridging finance, you can't get it. So really you need to get yourself into a position to be able to buy, and the best way to do that is to sell your house first.
Yeah.
I know that's not what people want to hear. I know they don't want to be left homeless, but that very rarely happens, does it, Lisa? Normally if you find a house if you sell your house, you would normally, if you have a nice long settlement date, you find something before you have to move out, don't you?
Absolutely, and I think then there's that tension to get it done, and we're all deadline driven to some point, aren't we? But I think knowing what budget you've got certainly helps you go out there rather than putting the cart before the horse, maybe.
There are non-bank lenders. I can get bridging finance, but when people hear the cost of that, they normally are not that keen. But I can get bridging finance, it's just going to cost you. But once again, you can do all the work, get it approved, and 90% of the time the people have sold their house before they need the bridging finance.
Yeah, fantastic. What do you think are specific things people need to know about the Christchurch marketplace? Say you were coming here from another marketplace. What's particularly important for Christchurch?
We've still got the earthquake stuff going on. So the good news about Christchurch is people coming here can afford to still buy a house because our prices are pretty good compared to the rest of New Zealand, especially the main centres. But we do still have the EQC that the banks want to know what happened to the house and if it's been repaired. Some banks are extremely difficult on that, and they will ask for the scope of works and the sign-off for all the repairs, and you've got to be able to get full insurance, no exclusions. Other banks don't care. They don't even want to see anything so long as you can get the full insurance. they figure that if you can get the insurance, then the insurance company's done all the work to check that the house was okay. But that's really the only issue in Christchurch, is just that we do still have that going on, and we do still have to check what happened to the house.
Yeah. It amazes me 12 years on that we're still dealing with this, and maybe we always will. The other area of interest would be monolithic clad homes. How do you go about getting finance if people want to buy a monolithic?
Banks will, a lot of people think, oh, it's monolithic, I can't get a mortgage. That's not true. You can still get a mortgage for monolithic clad houses. We just have to prove that it's okay.
Yeah.
So normally a full building inspection with moisture readings will satisfy any bank that wants to lend on it. It's very different. If the bigger the deposit you've got, or the less risk to the bank, the easier it is to get the loan. So if you were going for a 90% loan, you're probably best to avoid that sort of house.
Yep.
But if you've got a decent deposit and you've found a house and there's nothing wrong with it and the moisture readings are all clear, then yes, I can get a mortgage on it.
Fantastic. That's good to know. In terms of interest rates, we're seeing a little bit of softening potentially. I don't know if I'm just being optimistic. What's your thoughts about interest rates?
I think you're right. I think the interest rates are coming down. A lot of people were saying it was going to be 2 or 3 years, but I think now the economists are saying more like 1 year. We're seeing 6.85 for 1 year, 6.75 for 2 years, and SBS have come out with that 5.99 for 3 years, but that's sort of on purpose because nobody's fixing for 3 years because we all think the rates will be down before that. Whether we'll see those 2s, 3s, 4s, I don't think so. But I think they'll get down in the 5s, and they seem to be moving down quite quickly.
Yeah, that's great news because there's people going through a wee bit of pain at the moment, isn't there?
There is.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, because when the banks assess a loan, they use a much, much higher rate than what is available for people to fix.
Yes.
So at the moment, we're using 9% as an assessment rate. So even back when it was 2.99, remember those days?
Yes.
We were still using a test rate of 6.45.
Yes.
So to fit into borrowing the money, you had to fit in at 6.45, and really the rates haven't gone that much higher than that.
Yes, so they were stress tested at those
yes,
sort of
they
rates.
were at much higher rates,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So are there any misconceptions in the marketplace or myths that you'd like to sort of clear up?
Probably the main one is around refinancing. People think, oh, I'll move from ANZ to BNZ because they're going to give me 6% and ANZ were giving me 6.2%, But what they don't understand is they might lose the cashback, have to repay the cashback that they were given, and that can be a considerable amount of money. They might have to pay a break fee to get out of the mortgage. And once they move, they've got to pay another lawyer's cost. So it can actually end up not being worth shifting, and you just need to speak to people. And if people ring me to refinance, I work all those figures out to see whether it is worth moving or not. And honestly, 9 times out of 10, it's not.
Yeah, interesting. There was some work being done, I think, around the portability of loans across banks. Is that still ongoing?
It's still ongoing. They haven't come up with a decent enough concept yet.
Yes.
But yes, you can refinance from one bank to another at the same rate, and it just goes straight across. But you still have to use a lawyer to do it because another bank's taking the security of your house.
Yeah.
So there's definitely costs involved in that sort of thing.
Is there any ways buyers can effectively compare mortgage offers across banks? Obviously using you.
Use me. I was just going to say, go to a mortgage broker. You can get online and have a look what banks are offering, but you can do better than what's advertised. Yes, you can definitely do better than what's advertised. Really it is using a broker. And as I said before, if you go into one bank and they offer you $2,000 cash back, they're not going to tell you that another bank might give you 5,000. You know, we know what each bank's offering at any given time. So, you know, it is definitely worth your while using an independent person.
And in terms of giving you a call, getting you out, that's a free service, right?
Yeah, I'm not allowed to say it's a free service because we get paid by a bank, but it costs you nothing to ring me and get me out. Yeah.
And if you were coming out to visit me, what could I do as preparation for your visit so I don't hold you up? What are the things you need?
I need income, so normally 3 pay slips or your financial accounts, and I need to know your outgoings because that, as you know about CCCFA, that is the Credit Contract and Consumer Finance Act. It was brought in for vulnerable borrowers, and I don't have any issue with that. But unfortunately, it got loaded into the banks who already have checks and balances all the way through. And unfortunately, we need every single outgoing. So I need to know, I'm going to ask you questions like, how much are your insurances? How much are your rates? Do you have a pet? What does it cost you? Yes.
It's forensic.
Everything.
You'll know more about us by the end of it than anyone.
So that, I am going to ask questions, but honestly, most people sort of know. I don't need to know exactly on the day. Most people have a fairly clear idea of what they spend.
And so from the time you meet with someone, gather all their data, what sort of time frame should they look at for a pre-approval?
It takes me 2 or 3 days now to put one together, and then the banks are taking about a week.
Yeah. It's
so
not too bad,
it's not too bad, no.
That's good.
Actually, my biggest issue is getting the information from the customers. You know, they say, how long's this going to take? And well, this is how long it'll take me, but then sometimes, you know, customers can take 2 or 3 weeks to get you the information.
Yeah.
The bank statements and such.
So that's been an amazing update on the finance world. Thank you for all the work you do, and congratulations on that big milestone. I think 2 billion's just round the corner. Thanks, Sue.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Real Estate Uncovered. I hope you really enjoyed the show. If you did, please give us 5 stars and leave a review. This really helps others find our podcast.